Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Maxwell, and today I'm going to be starting a new lecture series titled Well-Rounded Fool, an exploration of atrocity. This is a new content platform, a new content strategy I'm working on right now, in a new setting. I'm at Salisbury University, and what I hope to do with this concept is to combine all my thoughts, all my ideas into a coherent project I've been working on for a very long time. So with this excerpt, this intro, if you want to call it that, is titled Abysso, which is Latin for in the abyss, from the abyss. And what I hope to accomplish with this is to give a brief synopsis on what my whole goal is with this series and what I'm really trying to accomplish. So I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the comments, all the criticisms on my content, and it's helping me formulate my ideas and formulate what I'm really trying to do, what I'm really trying to accomplish. So without further ado, let's get started with this. A well-rounded fool, an exploration of atrocity. What is that? And why am I doing this? And why should you listen to me? And why are you watching this video? All valid questions. So let's first define what a well-rounded fool is and why an exploration of atrocity is even necessary. I've been developing this theory of the well-rounded fool for a few years now, and you can think about the well-rounded fool as an archetype, as almost like a neo archetype, something familiar with Jung's work, stuff that we'll talk about throughout this 20-part series. You can think of the well-rounded fool archetype as a combination of two things. So the first part of the archetype would be the well-roundedness. So let's think about what well-roundedness is. The well-roundedness of an individual would be its variety of things: his intellect, his acquisition of facts, his ability to understand things, his cognition, his arsenal of skills, of mental, cognitive skills, psychological skills he has at hand to combat and to navigate throughout the world. Someone who is well-rounded is someone who has properly aggregated the facts and properly aggregated the relevant facts in order to afford the possibility to act in the world in a productive manner. You can think of that a really solid definition of what someone who is well-rounded, what that would mean. And the fool is the second aspect of this neo archetype. The fool traces back thousands of years. The concept of the fool is that which has the access to tell the truth, no matter what. Now you can think of the fool back in the medieval times, how the fool, the court's jester, he was the only person who was able to. He had a free speech card. You can think of it like that. He had the opportunity to have free speech. He was almost, you could think of the fool as the first person who can exercise the right of free speech. You could almost think about it like that. And the fool plays an important part, and not just medieval times, not just mythology, but in life period, because you cannot be able to operate in the world. You're not able to acquire those skills. You're not able to extract the humility that's necessary from those facts unless you're willing to be a fool first, unless you're willing to be a beginner, unless you're able to stave off your arrogance from the amount of facts that you know. You're not going to be able to properly use those facts and to properly use that intelligence that you've acquired unless you simultaneously have that ability to understand that everything you know is not everything you know. And that idea of is probably one of the most famous philosophical quotes ever, is from Socrates. The only thing he knew is that he knew nothing. That's a hallmark of Socratic philosophy, and it's a hallmark of intelligence. It's a hallmark of that humility. The only thing you know is that you know nothing. And one of the things that Socrates did, and why he was put to death, is he challenged those sophists. He was against he was kind of entangled in that. It's kind of hard, but he fundamentally challenged those sophists. He challenged the ever-going citizen. He challenged the status quo. He challenged the intellectuals. He challenged the esoterics. He challenged those people who believed that all they knew was what they knew and didn't want to further examine their beliefs. He also said the unexamined life is not worth living. And that's totally true. Why would you want to live a life where you don't put to test your beliefs? And why wouldn't you want to put your beliefs in the exact circumstance where they actually could be judged? Why wouldn't you do that? Well, I know why you wouldn't do that. Why would anyone purposely try to demolish their own beliefs? And why would someone purposely try to demolish their own perceptions? It's not just about demolishing your own beliefs. It's about your perceptions themselves. It's about how you even think that you even exist. It's your existence itself. So that's something that Socrates did, and that's something that he was eventually not liked and eventually killed, because he was one of the most prominent figures, Western figures, that stood up against the status quo and challenged everyone's beliefs, including his own. Simultaneously having that Socratic humility of understanding that everything he knew, despite the oracle declaring that Socrates was the smartest man in Athens, even despite that, he immediately tried to prove that wrong, tried to prove that case to be wrong. So you can juxtapose that humility towards the intellectual prowess of figures today and how that has become parasitized today. In what ways do you think of people who know facts and who understand things now? That level of humility is almost gone. It's almost non-existent. It's in that level of intellect, that level of acquiring facts, that level of that elitist part in culture is becoming fetishized, and it has been a fetish, particularly in the Soviet Union, with the scientists, with the elitists, with the Lysenkoists, with the pseudoscientists, with the people who combined ideology with science, who not just practice pseudoscience, but they almost formed a new entire religion, a new entire ideology that eventually led to the deaths of 100 million people, over 100 million people. So to tie all this together, what am I talking about? The well-rounded fool is the man who acquires the knowledge outside of the framework of morality. The well-rounded fool mistakes his intellect with wisdom. The well-rounded fool does not challenge his beliefs. The well-rounded fool mistakes his ability to acquire facts with his ability to utilize his wisdom, to utilize those facts in a productive way. The well-rounded fool is the complete opposite of Socrates. The well-rounded fool is the adversarial spirit. The well-rounded fool is the demonic spirit. And one of the arguments that I'm going to be attempting to make throughout this series is I believe the well-rounded fool, and I believe the precondition of evil itself, is the acquisition of knowledge outside of a moral framework. Because you have to think about what is necessary in order for someone to beat a completely helpless person alive. What is necessary for someone to commit an act of atrocity? Hence the subtitle of this series. What is necessary for someone to commit to consciously, not just this is what we're going to be talking about, because I don't think that evil acts exist in the physical world. I think evil acts exist in the culmination of it. This is something that C.S. Lewis talked about in his book, The Screwtape Letters. He said, let him do anything but act. And the more he thinks, the less he'll be able to act. And the more he acts, the less he'll be able to feel. And when C.S. Lewis said that, it made so much sense, because you think that evil exists, and that whole entire book is amazing, by the way. I highly recommend you read it. But you think that, you just have an evil thought and then you just go do it. You think that, someone just sees an opportunity, a open opportunity to obtain something that he ought not obtain, or to say something he ought not to say. You think he would just do it. And I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I actually think the evil spirit, it lurks in a premeditative sense. It lurks in the culmination of it. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. I think that evil exists before the action. And you can see this play out, and I'm going to attempt to prove that proposition to be true through multiple disciplines, particularly through a philosophical arguments, the psychological domains, phenomenological domains. We're going to talk about Heidegger. We're going to talk about the existentialists. We're going to speak about the most prominent philosophical figures, Nietzsche. We're going to talk about Schopenhauer. We're going to speak about a lot of people. I'm going to attempt to make this the most coherent and the most precise argument possible to defend this theory of mine. It's something that I'm going to be learning throughout this process as well. So please don't think that I'm some professor or some expert, because I'm not. This is a dialogue, not a lecture. It should be called a dialogue series. But what is necessary for someone to commit those acts? What is necessary for someone to pick up an axe and to kill a helpless old lady and her stepdaughter? What is necessary for someone to culminate a book of hate and disgust, and to plague an entire race for the mistakes of an entire country, and to strip away their rights, and to not just strip away their rights, but to just do away with the whole Constitution as a whole, and to ship them off into a whole different country, and to put them in ovens, and to kill them, and to justify it by saying that, it was the best thing that we did this. What is necessary for someone to be stripped away from their family? What's necessary for someone to turn into an informant on their own family, and to report someone for not parroting the relevant diktats of a totalitarian system? What is necessary for someone to alienate someone else and to dehumanize them and to make them work for them? What's necessary for someone to consciously participate in the act of non-being itself? Well, has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. Where does that start? If not in the culmination of your of your malevolent acts? Where does it start if not in the process of thinking about it? In the process of even having a thought like that even come to your brain? A book that Jordan Peterson, one of my really favorite intellectuals and psychologists, he really popularized this book Crime and Punishment. And I won't spoil it, but one of the things and one of the major themes in Crime and Punishment was that process of rationality, was rationalizing that evil act. And one of the things that Raskolnikov did before he picked up the axe and killed that oldest, you have to really break this down. This is really something that's really smart that Dostoevsky did in this novel. Before Raskolnikov killed and committed that act of atrocity, he had to first trivialize what he was doing. He had to first deconstruct what he was doing down to the motor actions. Well, if I just do this, well, it really won't matter that much because everybody doesn't like this woman anyway. And so if I kill someone that people don't like, that won't be as bad as if I kill someone that people actually did like. So he's going through, and he goes through these, he goes through days and literally days of this constant rationalizing, and trying to rationalize, to push his mind to the limit, to where the act of killing that person is trivial. He's trying to convince himself that what he is doing is not evil. And that's something that Solzhenitsyn also said. He said that, we're gonna really ruin this quote. He said, no human being does an act of evil unless he believes what he is doing is good. And that's so true, because in order to do those acts, and you do that all the time. If you see someone, and this happens in the micro, if you see someone drop a money on the ground and you see that they dropped that dollar, you're gonna say, oh well, if they drop money anyway, that means that they obviously mean that they don't care about the money. So it doesn't mean anything if I steal it. You have to rationalize yourself. You have to rationalize. You have to put yourself through those rigid domains of trivializing your actions before you act on the act. So you have to almost lie to yourself and deceive yourself before you even do anything. And that's a very radical claim, but this is something I'm going to be trying to explain in this series. You have to force yourself to make yourself believe that what you're doing is good. And perhaps you cannot do something, you can even perceive something without believing that it is good. Which is something that was a common theme in Genesis. When God was creating the world, he created the heavens, the earth, and he said it was good. He created the oceans, the birds, and he said it was good. So you can think of that as, here's the matter of the world. Here is the things that are essential. And I'm making these things, and I'm producing these things. And then they are good. Because you wouldn't make something if it wasn't good. It's almost like an implicit assumption that what you make ought to be good. If you're let's play God here. If you're making something, if you're producing something in the world, if you're acquiring facts, if you're engaging in a scientific endeavor, if you are participating in a project with someone, if you're in a relationship, if you're in school, if you're having dinner with someone, if you're in a intimate relationship, if you're in a whatever you're doing, it's almost an implicit assumption that once you create this thing, it ought to be good. Because if it's not good, then why make it? If it's not inherently good, why involve yourself with it? So this common idea of producing something for the purpose of it being good is something that goes back literally thousands of years. And what stands between the acts of evil and what stands between the culmination of doing that act is our free will. It is our individual freedom to pick and to choose which lane, which pole we wish to occupy. Because when people don't believe in evil, when people don't believe in these spirits, or however you want to name it, it takes away their free will. It takes away, when you look at life through such a deterministic way, oh well, people are just, or if you're plagued by an ideology that suggests that, well, the fundamental motive of people is just power, Well, you immediately you take away people's free will to act in a relevant way towards life. You take away people's humanity. You take away people's sovereignty when you look through a lens through such a rigid, deterministic manner, as if I'm just making mistakes, as if I just put 6 million people in ovens. That was a bad idea. Like, as if people don't have free will. As if Hitler wasn't in prison writing Mein Kampf, writing these things down, culminating and brooding on this hate, as if he didn't promote this book and share it and publish it and spread the gospel of it, unless he didn't consciously think that he was doing that. And you can also say that, people's motivation is just power, but what makes you think that someone's motivation isn't just hate itself? What makes you think someone's motivation can't just be the destruction of life? And that's not power. Germany was losing. They were losing terribly during the Second World War. They were literally losing. They were getting beaten on every single plane. That's not power. If you want to define power as the ability to exude your wills over anyone at any given time, well, that's okay. Well, or to have a endless supply of your wants. That's a reasonable definition of power. But if your entire army is literally dying in Russia and you're about to get bombed, and all of your people, all of your biggest war lieutenants are committing suicide, how exactly is that power? There is no, and you're burning money like crazy. How is that exactly power? There has to be some type of deeper motive that suggests what people act on into. There has to be some type of deeper motive, because you can't just say it's power, because in the most extreme case like that, where you can pretty damn sure say someone wanted power, if you look at it holistically, that wasn't power. And if that is power, it's a pretty crappy representation of what power is, even though Hitler was a very powerful person. But not to get too carried away here. The objective of this series is to tackle a few things. One, why do rational, sane, objective, ordinary people commit acts of atrocity? Why do sane, rational, completely normal human beings who have jobs, who have families, who have wives, who have kids, who live ordinary lives, why do those people specifically in the Police Battalion 101, that's a book, Ordinary Men, by Christopher R. Browning. I highly recommend you read that book as well. Because those men who were chosen to be in the police battalion, you would think that they would be the most pathological, ravished men you could find. But what Christopher R. Browning did what he researched and what he discovered was the main people on the front lines of the Nazi movement, they were ordinary guys. They were the most not only were they ordinary, they were the most unfit people that you could possibly find to fulfill that role. And you have to ask yourself, how in the hell is it possible for someone that you know who lives an ordinary life to leave that life and to jump headfirst into a fascist movement? How is that possible? How is that possible? It's a power, maybe. Is it the secret lust of resentment? Is it lust itself? There was a weird homosexual movement going on in the Nazi movement. I don't know. What is it? What are these motivations? The well-rounded fool is the man who stands in the way of actions and intent, who stands there and broods and plays both sides. The well-rounded fool is the man who mistakes his acquisition of knowledge for wisdom. The well-rounded fool is the man who believes that he can say what he has to say, do what he knows he has to do, and can get away with it. He does not believe that his actions must match his words. He thinks that he can pull a fast one and to distort the fundamental fabric of reality itself. The well-rounded fool mistakes his acquisition of knowledge and he throws away wisdom. He doesn't need wisdom. He doesn't need wisdom because I know X, Y, and Z, and that's all I need to know. The well-rounded fool does not care about culminating the facts in a relevant, reciprocal way with other people. And you could say that's power, and we're going to dive into how that possibly could be a fundamental motive. The well-rounded fool acquires knowledge outside of a moral framework and believes that he can pull a fast one, not just on the people around him, but on the fundamental fabric of reality itself. And through this series, we're going to explore how someone develops that state of mind and how they can forego that and to become aware of it and to provide a language, provide a mechanism to stave off self-deception, to stave off malevolent thinking, and to cultivate a system of wisdom, a system that updates itself to when self-deception is at bay. And hopefully through this series, we'll understand if we're the well-rounded fool or not, and how we can adopt the Socratic humility to be a fool, to know that everything we know is not everything to know, and how we can reinstill these classic Western values in a reciprocal, moral way, and to remain foolish and to remain humble on our quest and voyage and search for truth. My name is Kyle Maxwell, and I really hope you enjoyed this series. Thank you for your time.